from Arkansas's #1 trusted source for weather. This is a new podcast episode alert.
Hey everyone, this is Cameron
and Derek here with the founders and the beginnings of Arkansas Weather Watchers. Are doing our very first ever podcast, and kind of exciting and new thing that we're going to be doing here for the future.
Definitely. We get the question a lot, over the last couple of years about, how did AWW start? Where did you guys get the idea and everything like that? So, there's a lot that we're going to, talk about and everything about how it got started. Obviously, this started with you, Derek. I mean, I'm here. He brought me along, but this was your original idea about how AWW started. So, I think you want to. I guess you want to take the lead on that.
Go ahead. And it's of course, a lot of things. We are going to be going over. Not only the beginnings of AWW. But our upcoming trip, that we have coming up in May.
Yeah.
Also, we're going to be talking about, our rough go, and then all of a sudden, how in 2015 we exploded.
Yeah.
And got onto the weather scene, and then everything that kind of developed throughout that, throughout the stages of our past, and where we're at now. How we broke, our 100,000 mark. In 21, and then all of a sudden here we are in 23, staring down the barrel of a very bright future ahead. I mean, it's going to be a really exciting first show, I think.
Definitely. And I know this past weekend was my birthday weekend, and had an amazing chase, and I cannot wait for the upcoming trip in May. So let's talk about, speaking of trips and going to see tornadoes, let's talk about that 2014 Bologna tornado. This is how AWW started. You told me that all the time. I know back in, I think it was like October 2014 when we had first started talking, and you had brought me on board. I know my mom had a talk with me that day. She was like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I'm gonna let you take the lead with that one. This is before I got on with AWW.
Well, obviously, because AWW started in November 2014 officially. Ironically enough, I was down across it with our, with our family Thanksgiving. I told my wife, I was like, that would be awesome, starting a weather page. Because I already chased. I'm like, why not add forecasting, to that? I'm like, that'd be a perfect idea because, and the idea really stemmed from because, I've been chasing since 2006, 7, something like that. And, back then, it had been less than 10 years. But, I had intercepted Devlonia of 2008, intercepted Devlonia of 2011. But, 2014 was really when I started really paying close attention to what people were saying, what people were talking about, and how it involved everything. And, the main thing that I heard time and time again is that we don't have a source of weather. Because when the power goes out, all you have is a phone or a tablet, or a laptop, a computer, something like. Of course, this was before the era of smart TVs that really came to existence.
Yeah.
As we hit 18, 19, 20. But the smart TVs were just becoming on the horizon. But again, when the power goes out, when the internet goes out, nobody really had a source except for a phone. And a lot of people I talked to in the afternoon, because when first things first, when I was chasing that storm, it was just unbelievable because I remember we lived at Chenal Lakes on Chenal Parkway, who ironically just got hit by the tornado in March.
Yeah.
But I remember it very, very well because that night, it was a high risk, and I stayed home. And I thought, there's a chance that something could happen. Locally, and this is before our kids and all that stuff. So it was her, and at the time, her former maid of honor. And I told him I saw this storm coming out of Hot Springs development. I told him, y'all need to get it in the tub now because this could be the real deal. And this is before the warning went out. I remember driving down Chenal, down to Ferndale Cutoff, and remembering seeing this wall cloud coming over the mountaintop. And I remember I called the National Weather Service and literally I said, "Hey, this thing's already on the ground. We need to get a warning out now." And at the time, radar didn't kind of show loose that. This was before all the upgrades of the WSD 88.
Yeah, I think your radar back then, if my memory is correct, I think it's like every 5-minute scans.
Yeah,
back then.
Yeah, I think it was like 5 to 10 minute scans.
Yeah. Nowadays it's 1 to 3, if not less than that. Mm-hmm. So,
but it was kind of and it was a situation where I said, "Hey, and this was at the time before I knew there were actually people dying." There was a family, I think 5 or 6 there, a pastor and like 4 or 5 kids that was protecting his family. And this was coming down the mountain. All the time that I've chased, I was like, "Oh no, here we go again." And so it was a Sunday night. There was no Cantrell Road on a Sunday night is normally packed. There was not a soul on the road, and I remember making it from Ferndale to the bean field on I-40 as this was coming across the river in a matter of 15 minutes. Never could you make that drive in 15 minutes. And at that point, there was tons of people on the road. And I remember, just everything. And it was just seeing it going across the river, just seeing debris lofted in the air. You're coming in I-40 into Mayflower, and all you see are cars just being tossed and flown like nothing. And you're just like, what is happening? At that point, I had to stop because, search and rescue took priority over that night.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
At that point, we didn't know, how strong it was, anything like that. My only thing was, get help. I was just so crazed by it. I was so just like in shock that I had a phone ready to record. I never recorded. Part of church thing is recording the video, just recording, and then documenting and telling me, hey, this is what happened. You couldn't do it because it's like this happening in your home state.
Yeah.
Barely, it almost happened in your hometown. Around little did I know 10 years later what was going to happen, but, and it's crazy to think about that day. And then, I remember going back the weeks after that, talking to the people of Bologna, talking to the people of Mayflower. This before logos and all that stuff ever existed because I was just me chasing personally.
Yeah.
And, the biggest thing I remember talking, was, we had no warning. We had no way to get warning because by that time the satellite was out. By that time the internet was out because it had taken down towers, throughout many different areas. So at that point it was strictly, just people trying to figure out how to get a source of weather. And, I had a background, of forecasting from everything. A lot of self-taught, some ULM online, some MSU online. Never really finished it because family took the priority. And plus meteorology, I realized didn't pay near what I thought it would at the time. So, obviously I thought, hey, why not, use this for different stores? And that's when the idea just sat, and, and that's funny, ironic enough, it's going to go into where our topic our second topic comes in, because the Bologna tornado laid the groundwork for what would become AWW.
Yeah, and when I started, I know I actually started getting on Facebook back in 2012. Folks, this is Facebook had just gotten started. This was the most bare minimum stuff on Facebook. This is nowhere near what you guys got nowadays. Nowadays you have different selections and you can go do this, do that. Back in 2012, it was just very, very bare minimum. And we had a group called the Weather Mafia, and this is I know it was
wow,
funny.
I feel old.
Yeah, I missed that group. I think that group is still actually around nowadays. So that group I started in 2013. 2012 is when I started high school. 2013, 2014 is when I really kind of started posting more weather stuff. I remember posting about the April 27, 2014 high risk, the tornado that went through the Bologna area. And I think we had really started talking over the summer and into the fall, because I know that summer we had a lot of cold fronts that came through and everything, how the pattern was getting, favorable. And
just keep us in mind. He started school in 2012. I graduated in 2008.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about age here, sir.
Okay.
So, don't worry. Nowadays kids probably think I'm old myself. So, yeah. So we started that, and we started talking more and more and more. And I remember my mom and my dad was just telling me, they were like, "Hey, what you got going on?" and stuff like that. I was like, "Well, I'm thinking about, we had talked about it. We were like, I'm thinking about starting a page with there." And she was like, "Is this something that you really want to do?" Because keep in mind, this stems way past 2012. This was back when I was 6, 7 years old. I was really into the weather. I've always been into technology and everything like that. So obviously, when I got that computer for Christmas, she was like, "Okay, we're hardly going to see this kid." So
and I think actually now that I think about it, I think Ricky, you were doing a little work with what was then Magnolia Weather Now.
Yeah, now, yeah,
which no longer exists, but
yeah,
and I remember I thought, hey, this kid's smart, and the biggest thing I remember over the years is that I loved taking the younger generation, under my wing and teaching them about weather, teaching them about chasing and stuff like that, but at that point I was like, Arkansas needs a source of weather that they can count on.
Yeah.
And, I already chase. And, my thought was, why not combine the two? Because I had a background in meteorology. I had I was somewhat of a background in meteorology, but fully experienced in chasing. And, it's something I always wanted to do was chase, but I never thought about doing the weather coverage side of things.
Yeah.
And, this is back before Facebook Live. This is back before Twitter really had a thing going. This is back bare bones.
Yeah, bare bones, yeah.
Facebook. And, I barely knew how to create a page at the time. And, little did I know this 16-year-old kid out of El Dorado would teach me more about technology in the coming years than I ever thought that I would see.
Yeah, and a lot of that stems from me learning it myself. I mean, I had my uncle, he works in Minnesota. He does a lot of technology stuff and does a lot of building and everything. So he kind of showed me the ropes with that. And then I've always been a fast learner. I mean, I see one thing and I'm always able to replicate it. I'm always able to keep it going and stuff like that. So that's kind of how it got started in November. And then, from November 2014, boy, I remember our graphics back then too.
Don't get me started on that.
Our graphics back then, I looked at them, I think it was like a month ago back in the winter, how our graphics just evolved from 2014 to 2015, 16, etc.
2015.
Yeah. And from that 14 to 15 time frame, we were just, at first, a lot of people ask us, did we intend for it to become this big of a page? Did we intend at the time?
I mean, at the time, no, because originally I remember we were covering mainly Central and South Arkansas.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like a little community thing, and we never thought we would be sitting here today talking about a page that has the potential of just going straight into the galaxy, man. So, speaking of that 2015 2016 time frame,
so. Back then, around the 2015-2016 time frame, back then we had maybe 4,000 or 5,000 followers, and as most of the people we knew and stuff like that from El Dorado, Little Rock, etc. Plus a couple other guys, that we'll go over with a little bit who we brought on originally to help kind of mold things into the future. And unfortunately, one of them's no longer with us in general. He went on. But thanks to the year that we shall not talk about in 2020, but, talk about Steve.
Yeah, Steve, yeah.
But, the biggest, I think what really set us on the map was the winter of 2015. And the reason why is because I remember this very, very well, and it was actually, it was the winter of 2015, because it was, the page started that November.
Yeah, November 14th.
And then that following February was the storm, was the system, the February of 2015.
Yeah.
It was the Valentine's Day, around the Valentine's Day system that, we were watching this for weeks. We're like, okay, this could be something big. It was a year where we hadn't had much snow. We were in a snow drought. and back from the 90s, early 2000s, and I thought, okay, well, but beginning in 2012, we started a snow surplus because of the Christmas snowstorm in 2012.
Man.
But so,
Right.
and obviously that was pre-Valonian tornado, etc. But when we started talking about this system, and at the time, because my expertise was winter weather, Cameron's expertise was severe weather, and combined we helped, okay, let me repeat. Forecasting severe weather was his, chasing was mine, but anywho,
Yeah.
but when it
Yeah.
came to winter weather, I wasn't afraid to put stuff out there. I would do it on my own personal page, stuff like that. But this is the first time in a public spotlight that we had the opportunity to put out a forecast. And did it come with backlash?
Yeah, that was rough.
And it was extremely, because back then that was the age of social media, where a lot of people were, debrand not only in Arkansas but around the country. You get certain pages, certain people that were like there, and it was like, okay. But the thing is, though, this is when weather on social media was really starting to get going.
Yeah.
And it's when people were able to do their own forecasts and stuff like that, because it's a free country and, it's a free thing.
Yeah.
So we were able to do our own thing. And we did our own thing. We didn't care about other people. We just wanted to, again, make Arkansas a source for weather. And we put out a first forecast. We put it out 5 days early. 5 to 6 days early.
Yeah.
And this is before the National Weather Service. This is before the news stations did it, anything like that. And it came with a ton of backlash. We got ridiculed. I can't tell you what happened, and it was just ridiculous.
Yeah, it came with and I remember we were talking about it, man, and there was a lot of back and forth about, should we take this down? Should we, do this, do that? And thankfully enough, we just
stuck to our guns.
We stuck to our guns. And a lot of people, back then, you only had like one or two main sources. This is before everybody knew who we were and our reputation. So we were building a reputation back then, and as much as it hurt, and as much as, seeing those comments of people ridiculing us, stuff like that, you really can't really blame them, because it was the first time they heard about this page.
Yeah.
It was the first time that it was like, okay.
That one map went viral.
Yeah, it went viral.
And I'm talking to a few thousand shares.
Yeah.
And, I remember that map well. It was a forecast where everybody else was saying, maybe an inch, maybe 2 inches of snow. But looking at the setup, it was, I remember right, it was a bowling ball.
It was bowling
ball, upper level low,
yeah.
With a Arctic Ridge coming down at the same time. And, it was the
a
Gulf of Mexico was really, really warm. So it was one of those situations where, hey, this could overproduce. And I felt like it was barely people know, hey, this could overproduce. Leading up to the event, we stayed with the same forecast, tweaked it maybe about half an inch to an inch, and that was about it. But we stuck to our forecast, and it was exponentially greater than anything else. It was like, I think around, what was it, Cam? Like 6 to 8 inches, just for the Little Rock Metro, for example.
It overproduced big time.
But we had our forecast out.
We barely nailed it. I think our forecast was like a broad area of 2 to 4. I know we were kind of back and forth about adding some higher amounts, which ended up happening, because I know our forecast, as extreme as it was bare minimum correct in terms of the overall total. The overall total almost surpassed what we were putting out. Mm-hmm. So I think that was it for that. It was kind of a more broad 2 to 4. I think we had some localized spots over 6 inches of snow across the board. So, and I think, I was going to say, I don't remember from back then in terms of the overall exact amounts, but I just remember putting that graphic out. We were going back and forth about, is it going to produce? Is it not going to produce? Is, how we're going to deal with this? Because this is one of the struggles that AWW kind of dealt with, back in that time frame when we were just getting our names out, just getting the reputation going. And a lot of people, were like, hey, is this actually going to happen? Because you see this a lot on Facebook. You'll get a lot of these pages that will throw out these these crazy amounts of snow or crazy amounts of rain or anything like that, and it never verifies. So obviously someone that's never even heard the page or anything like that, they see that, they're going to immediately think, it's that. And fortunately for us, we saw the snow come in, we saw the upper level low come in, the cold air coming in, and I mean, boy, did it ever produce. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. I mean, going back then and dealing with the forecast and trying to figure out, what we're going to do and everything. And I know there was a sense of, hey, if this doesn't verify, how do we address this going forward? And I think that's a lot of, what people deal with nowadays, especially, and then this doesn't even have to do with weather. It's like, with sports or anything like that, you have to be very careful about what you post because you live by the sword, you can also die by that sword. So you just got to be very careful with it. And that's why I was like, and I remember telling you, man, I was nervous. My mom saw it, my dad saw it, and they were like, hey, are you sure this is actually going to happen? I'm saying, I've got a pretty good feeling it is. And it was one of our major forecasts, and my mom was like, hey, you okay? I was like, no, I'm nervous because, if this doesn't verify, then we're going to have to deal with a lot. So, but yeah, I mean, it was a significant amount. And I also remember trying to figure out where that rain snow line was going to be as well, because that's typical when you're dealing with an upper level low. Across
and so ironically enough, it was, this was a system to where, and I think it was later February, early March. Now, I don't think it was that system because it was like towards the tail end of the meteorological winter. I remember, and this is a system where nobody really knew what it was going to do, and we forecasted it, and we forecasted it spot on. We were within a half an inch.
Yeah,
and from that time forward, we went from 3,000 or 4,000 followers to almost 50,000 followers. That's about the time that we got introduced, to Jim Strickland as well.
Yeah.
I
love Jim.
Man. And this forecast that we put out actually led a lot of good people to us.
Yeah.
A lot of bad people. It kind of
just like a business. I saw this.
But it was at that point that Cam and I realized, this is going to take off.
Yeah.
At that point, here's the thing. Now we went to 20, 30,000, followers, at that point. Keep in mind, this was back in 2015. And from that point forward, it was kind of, okay, no big deal. And then, we obviously, hit a bump in the road for a little while.
Yeah.
And, forecasts were great. Coverage was great, stuff like that. But nobody really knew about us, and at this point, we were chasing, we had chasing on there, and we had all in one, and it was.
And I graduated at 16 and everything, and started a new job,
But the biggest thing is that nobody really, we could only do so much Super Bowl coverage. We could only do, so much chase stuff like that. This is before the era that our YouTube, was really there. This is before the era that our Twitter was really going. This is before this when we were trying to figure out our identity.
Yeah.
Going forward, and it came with a lot of struggles. We had a lot of good eggs. We had a lot of bad eggs. We had people who stuck with us through thick and thin, like Jim. But and I also can't forget the foundation that was laid with Eric. With Steve. Obviously, rest in peace to him.
Yeah.
But. Those two guys helped mold the start. They were our very first two admins on our team.
Yeah.
And then eventually, obviously, they went on their own ways and did their own thing. And then we met Jim.
Yep.
Then Jim came along, and he's stuck with us ever. He's been with us since 2015. He's been with us since the beginning.
He's one of our day ones. Like he's been there.
And he's been one of our original forecasters, and ironically enough, this is at the start of when we started seeing active hurricane seasons. His expertise was tropics.
Yeah.
So we already had severe, we already had winter weather, we had chasing. Well, now we added tropics into it. And unfortunately over the years, Jim's health has gotten bad, over the years, but again, Jim has still been there to help us, to help mold us, and help.
I mean, even nowadays, I could still contact them and say, hey man, what's your opinion on this? And the old saying is like, you can't teach a dog. You can always teach a dog new tricks.
Yeah.
And even with his old school tactics in terms of forecasting and everything like that, that will still get you a long way, even in brand new technology and stuff like that. So, my advice to anybody out there that's listening, always keep your day ones. The ones that are loyal by you through thick and thin. Because I can't tell you how many times I've approached Jim about a forecast that I had absolutely no idea what to do with, and he just got it. Not only myself, but Derek through it as well. And we learned a significant amount. I mean, I probably wouldn't be the forecaster I am today if it wasn't for Jim. So, also you, but yeah. Jim, his experience, his old school experience taught both of us about a lot of things, about something that, we didn't know and everything like that. So,
and then, obviously, from, after, the winter storm in 15, that put us on the map. And obviously, we went through another bit of a snow drought. And it wasn't a significant one, but it was definitely there. And, we had our events, obviously. We had several other events, stuff like that we covered. I chased, you covered, etc., vice versa. And, photos, fits, but it was an era where the identity wasn't really there. Yeah. And we didn't really have an identity because, we were still trying to figure out the whole Facebook thing. And then, all of a sudden, as we head to, in 2017, because Facebook launched live in 2016.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, well, 2017, we were still trying to figure it out. But then we started doing severe weather coverage on Facebook Live. And I think in the fall 2017
it was in the fall 2017 because I remember it because a lot of people they're probably going to be listening to this. We used to do severe weather coverage via the phone. Like I used to have my cell phone up, like right in front of my computer, and kind of go over like the radar and stuff like that. Yeah, that was. I go back and look at that. I don't know if it's like embarrassing
because I remember this was at a time when I had to step back chasing.
Yeah,
a little bit because my daughter was born.
Yeah,
in the fall of 17. So at that point, I just start figuring out more ways to help cover the weather in Arkansas as long as I can. And this was when we started building our forecast team side of things, and we were struggling, and but we kept the ship going, and. That's when Facebook Live, we discovered Facebook Live. And it was at the point in time where, news media in Arkansas was kind of wavering a little bit. And that was when, we were one of the very first ones to use Facebook Live for severe coverage.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, this stems back to the origins of 2014, where people always have a phone in their hand.
Yeah.
And a tablet in their hand.
Yep.
They're always on the go.
Yep.
Well, when you're on the go, you're not going to watch TV. So I told him, hey, let's utilize this.
Yeah.
And at that point forward, coupled with, in 2017 was a really big year for us because it kind of started us going forward because at that point it was, we had, we intercepted that following spring, the Canton, Texas tornado.
Yeah.
And at that point it was Cameron was covering severe. I remember very, very well that the day before I helped chase in Arkansas.
Yep.
The day before, and the next day the risk kind of shifted south. So Cam got a little bit of break, but Cam helped guide us to that Canton, Texas tornado, which ironically those storms moved into Southwest Arkansas when they weren't supposed to.
Yeah,
so we were chasing that all the way back to Arkansas that night with my good friend of mine, John Oliver, and so at that point it was like, okay. This is a thing that can work because we were live streaming on Facebook, live streaming and doing some weather coverage at the same time. Oh, this is cool. And at that point forward, all of a sudden the Weather Channel shared our stuff.
Yeah, and that's when we really got
And then all of a sudden we saw 20, 30,000 go to 40, up to 50, up to 60, up to 70. And this one was like, so this is a legit thing now.
Yeah.
And then we started adding people in.
Yep. And then I remember that, like, it was getting crazy. I mean, our footage got shown on the Weather Channel and everything. And, I mean, the numbers just skyrocketed from there. And, you know, we always tell people, and I tell people this all the time, you know, especially when they're starting out with weather pages, stuff like that, don't really focus on the number. You know, your passion for weather, your passion for everything should always be what drives you. It shouldn't be the number of how many people you have and everything like that. So that's the thing. You know, it's just something that you just have to keep in your mind whenever you're starting something. With that is like passion is always number one. It should never be about, you know, if you have 50 people or you have 100 or 100,000 or something like that. Because passion will get you far in this industry.
And passion is really what has, you know, set us forward because, you know, we survived the struggles. And, you know, 21.
It was a lot. You had 2020.
Yeah.
And I mean,
COVID was, you know, really brought the worst out in people. But in 2020 was also a year where, you know, storm chasing was kind of ridiculed. Yeah. But we did it anyway. And I remember 2020 very, very well because that was one of the biggest tornado outbreaks, you know, for us. And, you know, a buddy of mine, Andrew Moach, you know, we, you know, Cameron had to stay back in Arkansas while everybody else went to Illinois. And, you know, I remember seeing the setup. I thought, there's no way. Rain, clouds, cold front, crashing cold front. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And then it did. And we were in Jonesboro that year.
Yeah, I remember telling you about that particular setup because I know the HER model, for those that don't know what that is, that's the HR model, one of the very short range models that we use a lot. Well, I use it like 50% of the time. I don't like using any model 100% of the time because it won't ever get you far. But I know that model, it was like, and I remember that, I think it was like that night before. I mean, Illinois looked like, if you were a storm chaser, Illinois looked like basically a candy shot of supercells. Like if you were like a kid in a candy shot. Like you had a supercell here and a supercell there and a supercell here and a supercell there. And I remember telling you, I specifically remember saying this. I said, hey, don't play Illinois. Mm-hmm. Don't play it because you had every one of those supercells go up. And if you are chasing, especially strong tornadoes, you need some sort of parameter spacing. You need some sort of spacing out between those storms and not have every single one of them bubble up at the exact same time. And I looked at Arkansas, and I remember telling you, I said, hey, watch that northeast Arkansas corridor where you had those locally back southeast winds. You've got a good amount of spacing with your supercells. There was only one that went up, but you had a good amount of spacing. If something goes crazy down there, you know, we need somebody to commit. And at the time, you know,
and at the time, you know, that's when instinct kicked in. It kind of meandered the way towards northeast Arkansas, but didn't really, you know, we kind of stayed up there around the Paragould area, kind of right there on the border. Guess what? If nothing happened, we can go to Missouri, not worry about it. But if something happens in Arkansas, obviously, you know, Arkansas first. And, you know, that's what we pride ourselves on for so many years. And the thought process was, okay, well, let's see what happens. And, you know, I remember it very, very well. The storm formed, and it was right on the edge of Crowley's Ridge. Yeah. And, you know, to the west was Squall Line coming through central Arkansas, north Arkansas at the time.
It was a broken little thing, too.
And I was like, man, this may or may not do it. And then I remember very, very well, it tracked into northeast Arkansas.
Yeah.
It tracked. It was warned. It produced a tornado. You know, and we floored it down to Jonesboro.
Yeah.
You know, we got right on the eastern edge of town, you know, literally 15 or 20 minutes before the thing hit. We got set up. Memphis dropped the warning.
Yeah, it was severe thunderstorm warning, tornado warning.
It was severe thunderstorm warning, tornado possible.
Yeah, and then tornado warning, and then a tornado warning dropped. And I was on live, and this is back where we had a real good friend of mine, by the way, Blaze. He does an amazing job nowadays with drone licensing and everything like that. So this is back when me and him were kind of coordinating. We were like, okay, there was still a good amount of rotation on that storm.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't weakening. It was actually gaining in strength. Yeah. And I remember I remember getting on what we use on our radio thing. I remember getting on that, and I remember telling you, I said, "Hey, you need to floor it to Jonesboro. I mean, I don't know what you're doing or whatever y'all are doing, but you need to floor it to Jonesboro like ASAP because if this thing continues, it's going to be a major one, and it's going to be right there at Jonesboro."
And ironically enough, we were, the instinct of chasing kicked in, and we were already there.
Yeah,
and we were already there.
I remember you telling me that. You're like, "Yeah, we're already on the way
and
there."
I remember,
Okay.
I remember Ryan Vaughn screaming at the Nashville Weather, "Don't drop the warning! Don't drop the warning!" Ryan Vaughn and Zach Holder both, they were like, "Don't drop the warning." And we were already there. And I remember, I got on the phone with the National Weather. I said, "Hey, this thing is rotating. We have to walk that." And then I was like, "Oh, I literally said, oh, boom,
Yeah.
B, there's a tornado on the ground." And it's already in 30 seconds, it went from a noodle to a full-blown wedge. And I couldn't tell, the phrase that rang out across Northeast Arkansas from the videos and the locker room, "Oh my God, that's somebody's house."
Yeah.
I remember that clear to this day. Fortunately, unfortunately, it happened to be the mall. At the time, it was COVID. It just started. Lockdown had just started. Everybody was at home. Had people not been at home, there could have been a massive loss of life because it was Sunday night in Northeast Arkansas in a college town.
Yeah, that would have been,
But that brings me to the point, though. At that point was when we really started getting our identity.
Yeah.
Both as a chase team and a forecast team. And then all of a sudden, we turned the calendar to 21 post-COVID. We stood alone. We stood alone. Because, we stood alone as a full coverage team. And that was when all of a sudden 100,000 started. And 100,000 came to be partially thanks to snowstorms, that Arctic blasts, partially thanks to a submersible and a abysmal spring.
Yeah.
And then thanks to a lot of people who started sharing our stuff because they were like, "Oh, these people do this, this, and this, and this." Ironically enough, back in 2018, 2019, 2020, we had came up with the idea, we need to kind of separate the two, but keep the two together. So that's when, we all formed ourselves Storm Hunters because it was like, and, that was when, okay, because we realized our forecast page is getting big. But we're like, okay, let's just do two separate things, but keep it all in one, but still have it all in one. And so while we were chasing and doing our thing for it, while live streaming as well,
Yeah.
it was all of a sudden, here we are, 100,000 followers. And on AWW, and I was like, man, this is pretty awesome. And little did we know in 21 was just the beginning.
Yeah.
And, we obviously continued to chase under a separate thing, while we did several coverage on the main brand.
Yeah.
And, those two brands were, have stood the test of time so far.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
Again,
yeah.
And again, it was something that, hey, this is pretty awesome. But the 100,000 mark was something that we never thought we would achieve. And then we did.
Yeah, there was no way. I mean, I remember telling my mom about that when we hit 100,000, and my old boss, Angie, she works at Brookshires in El Dorado. I remember telling her that, and she was like, wow, like, there's just no way that we would hit, 100,000. This wasn't submitted, and keep this in mind, folks, we didn't plan it to be 100,000 page. We didn't. This was something that was supposed to have been, a 300, 400, 500, a little community page, something that, draws up enough attention, but nothing this significant. 100,000 is insane. And you think 100,000 is insane, earlier this year, back in January, we cracked the nail at 200,000.
Yeah. And partially that is thanks to the Arctic blasts of 21 and 22.
Yeah.
Because we forecasted high.
Yeah.
We put all of our chips on the table. I remember this very, very well because I remember it so well. I'm trying to remember because we had the massive snowstorms in 21.
Yeah.
Right.
By the way, that 21 event, we're gonna probably have like in a different episode.
Yeah, obviously.
To break that down because that was
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to talk about a limit tester or a limit breaker,
That was
that was an event.
But that was when all of a sudden we got noticed.
Yeah.
And even more so. So all of a sudden, 100,000 quickly scored 150, 160, 170. Then we had the fall severe weather season in 21.
Yeah.
After the crazy Arctic outbreak in the winter of 21.
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden, here we are. And now we're staring down the barrel. And then in January.
December 10th.
And then December 10th happened.
Yeah.
And we kept rising over, and then 21 turned to 22, and then 22 turned to 23. And then all of a sudden, here we are, 200,000 followers. And, at this point, here we are in April of 23, and it's still soaring, still going. The sky's, no pun intended.
Yeah.
But, the sky is the limit, and, with the 200,000 mark, I'm really excited for what, the future holds. Obviously, we have our tailgating coming up in May. We just got done with Cam's awesome birthday trip. And, during that, little time frame, a lot of new things were discussed. A lot of new things, were ideas that we can't wait to share with y'all in the future. About, what's coming up. Of course, obviously, our producer, and our developer, Rich, has really come up with a lot of good ideas.
He was a godsend, man. I mean, we struggled for so long for, from 18 to 19 to 20, talking about, getting an app going, getting a developer or something like that. And, it's very hard to find one that is actually legitimate. You have some out there, that will, message you or email you, say we'll do this and do that, and they end up, not being, truthful with it. And Rich contacted us and stuff like that. He's like, hey, I can really help you guys, achieve that next level and the level beyond that and the level beyond that. And I mean, he's done some amazing work so far, and I can't wait to see what he does in the future.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's going to be exciting and it's going to be fun. I mean, obviously the future of Arkansas weather is bright. The future of Arkansas Weather Watchers is bright.
Yeah.
Because it stems, from, a lot of things would not have happened. Our partnership with Arkansas Storm Team, Channel 4 and 16. Shout out, to Carmen Rose. Hayden Nix, Jeff Baskin, Pat Walker, Alex Libby, and all them. Because I remember, that was one good thing that happened to us in 22. Was that partnership
with them, and I remember, I've talked about this, before, and for anyone out there that's trying to get their foot in the water and stuff like that, and they, you worry about a meteorologist, coming at you say, hey, you don't need to be doing that, stuff like that. Like, no. I really do appreciate Hayden Nitz in particular because he was really the one. I mean, you talked to Alex, you talked to Carmen, and all those other things, but Hayden Nitz really kind of messaged the page and said, hey.
Him and Jeff both.
Yeah, him and Jeff both, yeah. And he kind of messaged the page, and it wasn't really so much as bashing us. He was just giving us
constructive
criticism, and that will get you a far ways in this industry.
And if we're talking about constructive criticism in meteorologists, then we definitely need to talk about our buddy Paul Wilkerson.
Oh,
because he was there alongside us from the get go. Helping mold our forecast, helping everything. Helping to basically get us, to where we are now, that 200,000+. And he helped. He was one of many that helped mold us and stuff like that. One of many meteorologists across the state. That help reach out to us, help, kind of guide our forecast path, kind of help, guide, how we do coverage, how we do these things. And, instead of bashing us, they were there alongside us to say, hey, this is a great source for Arkansas weather. Let's figure out how we can do different. How can we relay that public message? Well, this can be a whole other podcast, talking about, the different variables, and, hopefully we can get some of the guys on a podcast at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
To talk about, the generalization of Arkansas weather, and just that outreach and, how we can do things differently, how weather in Arkansas has evolved over the last 10 years. And, that stems to that 200,000 mark, and what the future is going to be.
Yeah.
The future is bright. And, we talked about our developer, Rich. And, I would love to have him on here, as well. And he's with us, talking, just to give you a few ideas of that future.
Yep. And, yeah. So, I remember just in particular, before we bring him on, it's like when he reached out and stuff like that. And, I mean, back in 2018, 2019, 2020, we struggled with the point of, trying to get an app going. I tried to put Minecraft into it. There was no way. We try to find other developers and stuff like that. And nowadays you can't because you don't know who to trust. Like, you have some out there that are legitimate, they will do it, stuff like that. But you have a lot also that will send you emails and send you messages, stuff like that, claiming that they will do it, and end up scamming you at the end of the day. So you have to be real careful about that. But yeah, I would love to have Rich kind of talk about his partnership with us and everything like that.
Thank you so much for having me, guys, on your very first podcast. I am so excited about everything that we have in store for the future, and I really appreciate the trust that you've given me and how welcoming you two have been. We have so much in store. We've got the app development that's about to go in full swing. We have other projects, including the release of this podcast. I'm so excited for the future because we can really honestly help a lot of people with the stuff that we've worked out and have in mind, and the team that we have an amazing team. But AWW has become my home, and I really love doing what we're doing, and I want to keep doing that.
Definitely, man. And we love to, like I said, we love to have you on board and everything. And we talked about how we can set Arkansas to be even the highest of highs, the highest of standards at this point. And I think having you on board and the team that we have and all our experience, especially with Jim. I mean, I know he's not really on the page and stuff like that like he used to be, but he definitely is still there. He still definitely give us some guidance and everything like that. So I'm really excited about the future.
We have a great team behind us too.
Yeah.
From Rich, to our moderators and everything,
our forecasters and everything.
It's going to be, the future's bright, and it's going to be a awesome going forward.
Yeah.
Obviously can't wait for our chase trip coming up in May. That's going to be
really
12 days in the plains. Cannot wait for it. It looks extremely active. At least fingers crossed anyway. So, it looks to be extremely active, and I'll be annoying you with my dad jokes the entire time. But we're not talking about that. Hey, it's going to be a hell of a time.
Y'all pray for me.
But again, we're excited. We can't wait to share stories with you. We can't wait to have more people on this podcast. And it's our very first ever podcast. My first time ever doing it. Cameron's first time ever doing it. I think Rich's first time ever doing it. But it's going to be awesome. And we can't wait to share our lives with you. We can't wait to share stories with you.
We've got stories for years. So
I think some people we have lined up, or Jeff Baskin is one of them.
Yeah, I would love to include definitely Paul down the road, because I love Jeff Baskin and love Hayden and stuff like that, but Paul was there. What was it, back in 16, 17 when we had first started talking about the winter weather and everything like that, and he is, he's definitely one of the guys that really kind of molded us into what we are now. So,
and I'm excited. I know Cameron is. I know Rich is. I'm as the owner and the founder of this thing, I'm really excited. And the future's bright. The future's great. So, I mean,
I think that's it. That's all
Yep.
we got, guys. So make sure you stay tuned to the next episode. The next episode, we're going to figure out, what we're going to talk about. I think the biggest thing will probably be that Snowmageddon in 21 and trying to figure out how to, how we deal with forecasting and everything like that, guys. So we love each and every single one of y'all, and we really hope you guys continue to follow us into the future.